again, was so slow. And I was like, I take this as a challenge. So I trained an Arctozolt named Chili. He has very, very low speed. However, he hits like a truck. Also, I can run Trick Room if I want to. I have Power Band if I wish. I also have a Power Herb for certain things if I need to be. And he has coverage for several types that he's weak against.
Laughs and Drakovich, Strong Jaws, Vicious Rend.
You can get an Arctozol with Slush Rush, which boosts his power in the hail.
That is true, you do make a point.
So yeah. Arctozolt. Actually a hidden gem. And clearly Smogon had to realize that if they banned it in the second highest tier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had been calling it good before people realized it anyway, because I had been seeing people dunking on it. They said that Dracovish was the only viable one to be used, and I'm just like, I take this as a challenge, how dare you? So yeah, that's my story. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I just sit here, I always tell everyone's always like, Empoleon's not that good. I sit here and I'm like...
Okay, so while you people were nerding out about Pokemon, I actually started the stream.
You dare.
Yes.
You dare catch me in my nerdy mode on my first day back on the job.
Well, another day, another podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show.
Yes, hello. I just recently got the new Pokemon game, so as you can see, me and Shadow were nerding out over Pokemon.
As per usual.
The crowdfunding campaign for Monster Hospital is still live. If you have not backed it yet, you probably should. It's a really good story. I would know. I wrote it.
I would also know. I co-wrote it. And edited it. And supervised it slightly. You know, I kind of had a lot of things to do. I just wasn't the lead writer.
Look, I'm just here vibing.
Yeah, you're actually a part of other stuff, not Monster Hospital related, but we can't talk about that yet.
Well, doy. I got stuck in Coleg, and I couldn't work on it anymore. So I'm salty.
Yes, you have problems with Coleg.
Yes, Coleg dumb. I will throw it.
Coleg.
Coleg.
Hello, Kitchu. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Yeah, it's an Undertale thing. She'll learn when she plays it for her channel.
Pardon me?
Hello, Zeal Gold.
We are waiting for the crowd to shuffle in before we can finally start, because we already got the chilling period out of the way.
Yep. We fanned about Pokemon a bit.
So yeah, there's only 20 of Lily's tips left, so I imagine we'll be through that within an hour, and the rest of the time is going to be us basically giving you good advice about writing.
Yeah.
Well,
also, since I'm
better advice than what she has.
I'm sorry.
Okay, to be fair, none of our tips have "you're a huge turd" at the end of it, so I don't know how better it is.
Excuse you. Ow.
I'm in Barnes & Noble, so these writing tips will be painful.
Who dares? Kit, you're around amazing knowledge and fiction. What the heck?
But he can't
There
access...
are books on writing in a store that sells books.
You know, bookstores are kind of weird. You could technically read the entire thing in one sitting and never have to pay for it.
It's true, you do make a point.
Yeah.
You're
I
all
mean,
you're really
some people
paying.
like to buy the books to keep, though, because that's what I do. I like to go and read, but I also like to get the books to keep because I might want to reference them later. And how can
Yeah,
I do that without the book? Especially if I
yeah,
need a quote from it.
yeah. You're really just paying for the luxury to take it out of the store.
Yeah, essentially speaking.
I mean, unless you're going for the dice, because Barnes & Noble sells D&D dice.
It
Because
is.
nerd
It is
culture.
true. It is
Fun.
true.
But anyway, that's the second. That's the second most interesting thing I realized today.
Oh, what was the first?
Well, I can't say because it's research for a project here at Brainfreezerrr.
You hecker. I'm so far out of the loop. College has hurt me.
It's that article I sent you.
Uh, uh, I understand. I'm good. Never mind.
Now she gets it.
Look, I had insomnia really bad last night and didn't go to bed till 4. I am die.
I am poking fun. Do not worry.
Deathhead says, I am here, but I'm too busy charming Commander Mars's per ugly.
Good luck with that.
Somebody screenshot that. That's an amazing out of context quote.
Yes. I know the context because I've been playing alongside him, and it's entertaining.
I also know the context because I too have played Pokemon Diamond when I was in high school.
Yay! Pokemon fans unite. But not in Pokemon Unite, because expensive.
MOBAs always are.
I'm not playing it because I spent my money on Metroid Dread instead.
I mean, I'm not playing it mainly because I don't want to. It just doesn't look very interesting to me at all. I'd rather save my money for Legends Arceus.
Thank you, Shadow, for screenshotting it. One day...
Screen snipping is a useful tool.
Yes.
I'm just glad we don't need to have Wraith here to do that anymore.
No, now I can do it too.
You'll have the power.
So much power.
You have the power. You have the power of pressing the print screen key.
I can reveal everything.
All right, it's been about
Guess what?
chicken butt.
No. I have gummies.
What kind of gummies?
I would share my gummies with you if I could, but sadly I cannot teleport them through the screen.
Send them through the internet.
I...
If only I could see your face.
You. Heck you. I will find you. And I will back you.
The world's strangest taken spin-off that I have ever seen in my life.
To be fair, I'm already strange anyway, so I might as well give you more strange.
I will find you and I will hug you.
That entertains you
I
so
do not
much.
know who you are. I know I am a teddy bear with.
I am but a
wonderful
simple
skills,
child. I am easily entertained.
But I am a bear. But I do not know who you are. And I do not know what you want. But I am a bear with plenty of skills. I will find you. And I will cuddle you. Did you guys know that Lily Orchard is anti-anime? Okay, that's not... Knowing her, that's not entirely that surprising because...
I mean, from what I've read of her tips, she seems anti-fun as well.
Okay, I say this despite the fact that she does a really long series review for Little Witch Academia, which is a sort of slice of life, sort of action comedy series that's worked on by Studio Trigger, the Kill la Kill guys. And she gets all the way to the end, and she gets really she has like comments for like people who say that Trigger does really good action stuff, and she's like, no, they don't. They do really good comedy stuff. And so you can tell that like she's not really a. I would argue she's more like anti-action shows, if anything, which is really hard considering that one of her favorite characters is literally an undead elf archer.
Isn't Little Witch Academia the show that people watched when they're embarrassed to say that they like Harry Potter?
Maybe. Yes, Kichu. They also worked on Brand New Animal.
Of course,
Yes.
Kitchu would be the one to
Hurry.
bring that up.
Hurry.
Thinking emoji intensifies.
Look, I'm allowed to say
Oh, it
that. I can
happens.
hurry. I made the chat go quiet, didn't I?
Alright, let's get into Lily's yikes tips.
Let's
do
go.
this.
Number 81. When writing lettuce, bacon, tomato characters, stay as far away from Rocky Horror Picture Show as you possibly can. Some gay people hold it up as a meaningful part of our culture. It is not. It's a misogynia nightmare made by an actual TERF, not a reference guide for anything.
Okay, first off, I want to get my grammar Nazi thing out of the way. She did not spell transmisogynist correctly.
I think she was trying to say trans-misogynistic, and she did it.
Yeah, she's missing an O.
Wow. Spelling error.
Yeah, but to be fair, this is also like that's kind of beside the point. This is like one of the parts that gets super super touchy because this is attacking because like she already makes jabs at stuff, and then this is just her making another jab at stuff, and like I'm on the fence here because like I don't really understand that much about the LGBT community, so I don't entirely know what would qualify as like good reference for helping create characters and what wouldn't work for creating referencing good characters, but that's besides the point.
Here's an idea. Write them as normal people.
Gee, it's almost like writing people is a good idea.
I'm just saying, because as far as I'm aware, I mean, you get those select people, but most people in the LGBT community just want to be treated like normal people.
And they more often than not kind of get sort of annoyed when they don't entirely act in the same stereotypes that are usually put on them by people who are watching their content or from other people in the LGBT community, like Lily.
I actually have one thing to say about Rocky Horror Picture Show, and this has absolutely nothing to do with gay people.
Oh, well, let's hear it.
Alright, so, when I was growing up, my dad would tell me stories about times he actually went to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show in theaters, and apparently, I don't know if this is still a thing, but he would tell me stories about how people would go to showings of this movie and actually bring stuff to actually throw at the screen during certain scenes.
Oh my gosh! All right.
Old cinema.
Like during the opening wedding scene, everyone would throw rice at the screen. And then when, I forgot which character it was, but when one of them calls Tim Curry a hot dog, they all start throwing wieners at the screen.
Old cinema. Back when going to movie theaters was fun.
Yes.
I
think the modern incarnation is
skeletons in the ceiling.
I think the only other movie I've heard do that was The Room.
That's amazing.
Huh. Peculiar.
Yes,
But yeah, apparently people back in but my dad was probably in high school or early college back then, so this was almost 40 years ago.
Yes.
Not entirely that surprising.
Yeah, not really. The old days were wild.
So yeah, for the most part, I don't really have a big comment on 81. Maybe aside from the fact that like if someone is going to use Rocky Horror Picture Show as a jumping off point to help write LGBT characters, then that's probably what they're going to do, and no amount of complaining is going to change their minds.
I mean,
I wouldn't use it because I had no idea what was going on half the time in that movie.
I've never seen it either. So,
Aliens.
you know,
It is not. I don't know if you would like it or not.
to be honest, I don't know either since I don't know anything about it. So, you know.
Aliens.
And it gets pretty sexual.
Yeah, just aliens.
Look, at this point, I don't get all that bothered by sexual stuff. The only time I'm bothered is if it deals with sexual abuse. If it's just sexual stuff in general, I can handle it most likely.
Yeah.
Got it.
Alright, chat, new rule. Whenever somebody says hot dog, you throw like an Oscar Mayer wiener at the screen.
No, throw Vienna sausages.
Just kind of lightly smack the screen with it. Don't try and break it.
No, throw it as hard as you can.
Why? You want them
Make
to
it
break their
stick to the
laptops?
screen. Make it stick to the screen.
Tape
Apparently.
it to the screen and slap it every time somebody says hot dog.
Oh my god.
If you see like red liquid coming off the screen, that's not blood, that's brine.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
The Q slur as a
Anyways.
concept technically reinforces heteronormativity by casting but lettuce, bacon, tomato people as inherently strange. In no big deal representation, the word should be avoided. Normalizing lettuce, bacon, tomato people and the Q slur are like oil and water and don't go together.
Okay, this is something that I actually do want to like say something about because we actually did like sort of glance over another point that she made. So, for anyone who was watching in the last, for anyone who was watching in the last video, for the last podcast, by the way, there was a point that Lily had made that we skipped over that was mentioning something along the lines of reclaimed slurs, or something along the lines of reclaimed slurs. All right, here it is. Reclaimed slurs are not universal and as such should never be used in a work. Okay, my thing is like, yes, the words technically have stigma to them, but if you have characters who are part of the marginalized identity who end up taking back the word as their own in some way, that sort of gives them some sense of power and sort of takes power away that the word can be used when it's used by other people because they have essentially taken back the word as a little bit of their identity of sorts. So like when she technically says that, it's sort of like going against, for example, like black rappers who can't use the N-word during their songs. So that's sort of my thought when
Kendrick Lamar.
In regards to point 82. Like if I had to repeat myself for 62, then that would have been the same thing. Like if it is like something that like is important for the characters to do to essentially reclaim some part of their identity or reclaim some power over themselves, then them essentially working to reclaim the word would make sense and can be seen as a triumph in some regard.
And I know a lot of LGBT people that refer to themselves as queer. It's not that freaking big of a deal. The new term for the LGBT community, most of the time that I see, is LGBTQA.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, I think that she thinks that it's a slur, and it might have been used as a slur at some point
It used to be a slur.
But then,
It used to
but
be,
now
but
at
they
this, but now
reclaimed
at
it.
this point, it isn't.
Like at this point, it's part of the train of like acronyms.
Yeah, that freaking acronym is huge. So most people just shorten it to LGBTQA or LGBT. I
I'm
usually say LGBTQA unless I'm in a rush, then I say LGBT.
Yeah, makes sense.
Why do we
The
have to
point
lump the?
is, I don't exclude the people, I'm just shortening it, and you can assume I mean all the rest. But yeah, like, point for me, it's just, it's not a slur. It's literally a reclaimed word. So chill.
Words only have power when you give them power.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So if you don't give words power, then they don't have power.
Which
Eddie
is
Murphy
why
logic.
if you tell everybody not to say a certain word, it only makes them want to say it even more, and you give it more power than you probably are thinking you're giving it.
It's sort of like how everyone sort of, at least nowadays, sort of do stuff where they end up making Nazis boogeymen, when, like, back in the day, Nazi stuff was made to make fun of them, to make them a joke, therefore not threatening.
In fact, after the whole thing about the Holocaust came out, it took until Mel Brooks and the producers to actually bring back us making fun of Nazis.
Well,
Yes.
I'm forgetting how to write in cursive today, guys. What the crap?
Why are you writing in cursive?
I'm testing pens out while I'm thinking my thoughts because I draw to help me think. And I keep
Like you
messing
do.
up words. I'm trying to write my name and I keep misspelling it.
Bean.
Oh wow, I would have never guessed. It's revolutionary. Spelled it wrong again.
Number 83.
Oh.
You guys want to skip this one?
Only thing I will say is
I was going to say it's
yeah,
not writing.
that's no.
I was going to say it's not writing advice and not real comment, aside from the fact that, like, again, like, people who have been abused can be villains. And I think that sort of applies. I don't know if that really applies to this one, but yeah, no comment. Not really writing advice.
Yeah, just ugh.
All right, rape is bad. The sky is blue. Epstein didn't kill himself. Let's continue.
Yeah, let's go, please.
Grass is green and the moon is made of cheese, apparently.
Yes, it's clearly blue cheese.
Yes, exactly.
84. Sex scenes are never necessary. You want to include one because you're horny, then more power to you. But any attempt to justify it as important to the story will only get you laughed at. Well, you know what also isn't...
This makes no sense to me.
You know what also isn't necessary? Explosions in action movies. But you know why they're there? Because they're fun!
Yes, true. I would like to argue that, technically speaking, because the fact that sex scenes are usually just intimate moments, it technically does mean that it does showcase a lot of stuff like characters, like, in a deeper level, as opposed to them just talking casually to each other. So there's sort of that going on, and then you can technically use that for quietly weaving in elements of subtext, so therefore you can actually make them far more important to the story than you think they would.
I like how Kiju is asking, what about B-Stars on the one where we talk about sex scenes?
I mean, to be fair, he is not wrong, especially regarding Haru.
I haven't seen Beastars, so
because I was gonna say,
okay, I've seen spoilers, so I probably should not say things because spoilers. But
do not say things.
I didn't say anything. What? Look, point is, I understand Kichu's point.
Alright, well, let's continue before Kichu gets horny.
I was gonna say yeah, and also my point, when I was mentioning how like sex scenes could be can be necessary for like pushing for like characters and subtext within stories. I say this as someone who is not really that interested in sex, so yeah,
And
there's
I
that.
really don't talk about it much outside of me and obviously my fiance, but uh the most that I can say is that it's basically the most intimate moment between two people because you're quite literally giving yourself to the other person in a sense. If we're going for an intimate moment here, because it's a connection between body and mind. So it can indeed further story in that sense.
Mm.
There's a lot more to it than that.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying is that Lily is a huge turd.
And is also like, if you count this along with like a couple other points that she makes, like in regards to stuff like horny armor designs and how people are defined by their relationships, while also like never actually like touching on the idea of like platonic relationships, but only ever sees them as being romantic. There's sort of like a vague shaming thing going on with her. I don't know why.
Look, you're not allowed to be horny, and you're not
Fun
allowed to be
fact,
friends,
Lily
alright?
Orchard thinks very highly of Movie Bob. Oh no!
Oh dear.
That
I
makes sense.
hurt.
Okay,
That hurt.
so for those of you watching this, either live or on the replay, who don't know who Movie Bob is, this is a guy who not only... All you need to know about Movie Bob is that he unironically wrote a book about Super Mario Bros. 3, where he unironically called the console wars his own personal Vietnam. And likened the release of Super Mario Bros. 3 to that of the Kennedy assassination.
That's a hot take that I'm not gonna touch.
Oh,
don't
in
even
this
wanna
in this
know.
exact same book, by the way, he literally writes a Let's Play.
Beautiful.
And,
I'm just...
and when I say write a Let's Play, I mean he meticulously writes out how he plays every single part of the game.
No. No. Oh my god.
And then, this man who's like 6 foot something, 400 pounds, has the nerve to tell gamers, how to have a healthy lifestyle.
Don't frickin' tell me how to live my life. I will eat pizza as much as I want, sir.
You know, I've been trying to lose weight lately, but I also really love pizza.
I haven't eaten pizza for a really long time now that I think about it.
You should,
I've
it
been
is
mostly
good.
eating like salad and stuff from Chick-fil-A and like Chick-fil-A food because freaking college.
Yeah, but Chick-fil-A food is good, though.
I mean, you ain't wrong. We also have discount Subway called Subco. I'm not joking. It's Sub Connection.
I imagine that's the exact
I said
same...
discount Subway! It is discount Subway!
I imagine that it's literally just a Subway logo, but they cross out way and put Connection in Comic Sans.
No, actually, it's Subway, but it has a, God. How do I explain the logo? Wait. I'm trying to figure out how to explain the logo. wait a minute. And it's subpar! It actually isn't bad, though, kid. It's not that bad, subs.
Okay, one last thing about Movie Bob, and then we'll move on. I'm trying to find the picture. Oh my god! It's the picture, and it even has a quote from the book in it.
Oh no. Oh,
Alright.
no.
Why do we make fun of Movie Bob? I don't know. Maybe it's because of this. After about 20 minutes of waiting, I was joined by another pair of... You know what? I'm not going to read the whole thing.
Oh gosh. Anyway, here's the logo if you wanted to see what it looks like.
Let's see.
Minimalistic.
But yeah, see this picture on the left? This is an actual picture of Movie Bob.
Yeah, I've seen this, and I'm just...
It's a beautiful image, and something that I find hilarious is that people have taken that picture and have photoshopped him to look like Wario.
Nice.
No wonder Movie Bob's tweets are posted on r/just neckbeard things. Let's not forget the fact that he literally advocated for genocide at not genocide, eugenics at one point.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, you know what? People I don't like probably shouldn't breed.
Guys, look at this picture. This is not on my campus, but it's beautiful. There's Sub Connection, and then there's Jazzman's Cafe and Bakery.
I mean, the logo makes it different from Subway, but it still looks like one of those...
Oh, you should see the paper that it comes in. It has arrows on it.
It looks like one of those restaurants that the airport itself runs.
Lovely, I get airport food.
Let's continue. Number 85. Strong characters can still cry and need support from others. Vulnerability is not a character flaw. In fact,
this is literally just her repeating her previous point where she's saying crying and being vulnerable is anti-feminist.
Alright. Which is it then? Is it bad or is it good? Make up your mind.
I do not know. Well, no, this is repeating just the same point. It's just reworded differently. Like, the previous point, I think, mentioned something along the lines of emotional vulnerability is not anti-feminist. Strong female characters can cry too, or something like that.
I thought it said that crying is anti-feminist. Clearly, I have been logged out or something.
Actually, I have a good thing to say here. Saying that you do need help, that in itself makes for a strong character. Like, admitting that you need help or that you do have a problem shows a lot of strength.
Yep. Self-awareness. It's a good thing.
Sadly, it's in low supply nowadays.
Yep.
So any other thoughts before we go to the next one?
Not entirely, no.
Alright. Number 86. Peak TV is a fancy way of saying, addiction-fueled misery porn.
Huh. It's a very choice words for it. It doesn't entirely sound like writing advice, but considering that this is probably aimed toward people who work on TV shows, people who work on TV shows, unless you're indie, usually have restrictions that they have to work in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, a lot of TV shows that wanted to put LGBT representation in them literally had to fight for it to not be censored.
Oh, you mean like Gravity Falls?
Yeah. Alex Hirsch entertaining.
Oh, he was pissed in June.
I believe it.
Because Disney put up like that one picture saying everyone's welcome under the rainbow, and then Alex Hirsch just like, then why did you keep me from putting 2 gay characters in my show?
They only do this for the American audience. They have to sell to China because China is their biggest market.
Then why
She
put
does
them
have
in
a
at all?
she does have a point.
Because they want their cake and eat it too. That's why.
The freedom of expression.
Number 87. Addiction-based storytelling relies on serialization, cliffhangers, shocking twists, constantly raised stakes, and an obsession with foreshadowing to get people not to watch, not because they're enjoying themselves, but because they're stuck at attention high. Or maybe the storytelling is doing its job and they're genuinely interested.
Again, if this is for like, again, certain writers are under restrictions depending on who they're working for or if they're indie. So like, yeah, there's also the fact that sometimes like like if you're writing the story, more often than not, you'll like naturally feel it progress in your head, and then you'll realize that it slowly starts morphing into a different sort of monster when you're working on it. So there's the thing where like stuff like serialization, cliffhangers, and shocking twists, and raising stakes, and obsessions with foreshadowing sometimes feel like they're warranted, and sometimes they just feel like they just flow naturally into the story in some way.
And sometimes you're happy days and jump the shark.
Oh wait, there's a part 2.
Yeah, it's on screen right now. By the end, the viewer is only watching for closure because they've already invested so much and they need their fix in order to feel like it was worth it. This is the same business model that soap operas use. No, time out.
I was about to say no.
Soap operas work very differently than your typical TV show.
Oh, soap operas are trip.
Aren't they literally just shows on stages anyway? So they're sort of like theater. They're like theater with a camera.
Pretty much. But there's also another thing that I don't think a lot of people realize. The reason why plot twists happen so often is because the writer's room is kind of a revolving door. So the reason why all these plot twists and character changes happen, it's not for the sake of storytelling. It's because their entire staff is a revolving door, and maybe the writers didn't like how one thing was done, so they literally bring back a character back so they could use it again.
Look, it's because of reasons and citations.
But honestly, the rise of the internet has actually done something really interesting to our media where, I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot more shows have become serialized after the advent of the internet, and more specifically streaming.
Well, yeah, because with streaming, no one has to like sit and wait for an extended period of time for the next part of the story to happen, because if they're streaming it, they can just watch it all in one go like a marathon. Streaming literally allows them to marathon serialized shows.
Exactly.
Series, whereas when they weren't streamed, you would have to wait like long extended periods of time for the story to continue. This was like her big thing against Steven Universe, because Steven Universe was like, because it went on so many hiatuses and there was so many filler episodes, the fact that it was serialized stuff was sort of an issue, because they had the filler stuff like in between like the big story beats that were happening for like major arcs, and then like that's a big reason why Lily sort of skews the way that she just doesn't like serialized storytelling.
I mean, Steven Universe has its own problems.
Oh yeah, she goes over a bunch of them, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, most of this list is her complaining about Steven Universe and She-Ra.
Among other things.
Number 88. If the sunk cost fallacy didn't exist, shows like Steven Universe and Game of Thrones would have been canceled by season 2.
Speaking
Lily,
of Steven Universe,
Lily, the shows are over now. You can get over it. We've been
Okay,
in this therapy session for
you know,
years.
the sunk
It's time
cost
to move
fallacy
on.
is an actual thing, but I don't think that applies to either of these shows.
Would you like to explain a little in depth what the sunk cost fallacy is?
Basically, it means that the more you invest in something, the more likely you are to make decisions to justify your investment, even if your decisions make absolutely no sense.
Ah, okay, that makes sense.
It's the equivalent of, let's just say that you buy a $60 game and the game sucks. Chances are that type of person would probably go onto a forum to defend the game to justify their own purchase, even if they know that the game sucks.
Hmm. Yeah, when you say it like that, that makes sense. Okay, so you had mentioned that you don't think the sunk cost fallacy is the reason why Steven Universe and Game of Thrones, or it doesn't apply to Game of Thrones and Steven Universe.
Yeah, because with Game of Thrones, the show was incredibly popular out of the gate, so there's no way HBO would have canceled it at season 2.
There was also the fact that for the most part that the writers had like what how many books when the first season came out to work with for material.
Yeah, I
So of
think it
course
was
they were able to keep
only,
stuff going naturally.
funny enough, it was season 8 that they actually had to improvise and not work from the books, because the last book is the one that they didn't have material for. And you know how well that went.
Oh yeah.
In fact, I think I mentioned before how Game of Thrones season 8 sucks so hard that it actually retroactively ruined the series. Like people used to not be able to shut up about Game of Thrones, and now whenever anybody talks about it, it's that fucking ending.
To be fair, I stand on the fence that Daenerys was absolutely foreshadowed to become a tyrant. You don't just make this sweeping speech in early seasons where you will take what is yours with fire and with blood and not come off as being a little skewed to be possibly fall off the wagon in the end.
In the case of Steven Universe, there is something that I don't see a lot of people talking about. And that's the fact that Steven Universe was kind of an that not a lot of people were watching Steven Universe when it first came out.
yeah, I never started watching it when it first came out, but I was in a weird era in my life.
Yeah, like in
So Steven
2014,
Universe was mostly just flew under everyone's radar.
pretty much. In fact, in 2018, I was even going around calling it a hidden gem.
Nice.
You probably regret that now that Steven Universe Future is out.
Oh, yes, I do. But here's the
I've
thing.
actually,
There
I
is
actually keep hearing from a friend of mine that Steven Universe Future is better than Steven Universe.
In what ways?
I think it's because it tackled the mental health of the actual main character.
Which is weird. Because they technically sort of tackle it within the show before Future. So it seems weird that it's all just coming down on him now.
my point is
I don't know this
there
one.
is
I
this
don't know. I had my freaking crisis at 17. I don't know. Is it not normal?
so I get so as I was saying, Steven Universe. So 2014, Steven Universe was still kind of a series that flew under everyone's radar. But then there was one episode that changed literally everything.
Garnet.
Garnet.
When it was revealed she was a fusion, yes?
Yeah, that whole episode, that was the point where Steven Universe went from hidden gem to why won't people shut the fuck up about this?
because gay rocks.
So, as cynical as this sounds, I've heard a theory where Cartoon Network didn't want to cancel Steven Universe simply because they didn't want to be the ones to fire the first female creator of a Cartoon Network show.
And for a show that is like very subtly tackling like the extra themes that usually don't go through in children's shows until of recent time.
Yeah.
I love. Yes, subtle. Let's go with that.
Okay, subtle as it could be, they didn't put it on. They didn't have people doing it. They had alien rock people, so that's sort of their way of doing it. That was their allegory. That's their story, and they were sticking to it.
But here's the thing: I don't really. I think Steven Universe gets a lot of unneeded hate. I've explained why, but I still am not going to sit here and say that it was the greatest thing ever made.
I'm definitely not in that camp either. And the Steven Universe fans are probably going to kill us, but like,
I will say that
that good.
I'll say this about Steven Universe: they did their own thing. I'll commend them for that, but there's still a lot of problems that could have been easily resolved.
Some of the art.
Well, not even the art, because I actually think the art style.
Sheets. Use them.
Yes, reference sheets. Tell your story. Actually, come up with a story. Don't have your storyboarders come up with it. Honestly, I think that's the biggest actual complaints you could have about Steven Universe is the lack of consistency.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to with the art as well, because there's inconsistency in sizes and stuff.
But the overall art style of Steven Universe, I think, works for the context of the show. It's a very... Because it focuses a lot more on emotion rather than raw action, so I think the softer art style works well for it. But I think a lot of people also look at Steven Universe as the reason why a lot of animation studios are getting lazier with art. Because they're like, oh, it worked for Steven Universe, we don't have to try anymore. When in reality, Steven Universe's art style was actually worked for it.
Yeah, just match the art style to your
So
show.
I guess if there's one thing to take away from this, it's don't copy something because it's popular, especially if it doesn't fit. Thundercats roar.
I.e., cheap comedy does not work for a show that was mostly action.
It's actually kind of funny because good comedy, because good animation can make good gags even funnier. All right, Shadow. Here's your favorite one, and number 89. Hardcore fans will tell you that continuity is the most important thing. They're wrong. Before you get on your rant, Shadow, I just want to say, Lily, you ignorant slut.
Thank you.
Continuity is literally the thing that holds that creation's universe together.
Like, there's literally a reason that that some of my favorite channels, back when I watched a lot of Brony content, had a joke related to continuity.
Because continuity doesn't just cover story. It covers how people act, how the world works, the magic system. Basically, continuity is making sure that everything runs as clockwork. You throw continuity out of the window, suddenly you're left with a world of chaos. And not a fun one.
And a Fluttershy that hasn't grown past being scared of her shadow.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, that's the thing a lot of people, like, get really confusing with continuity. Continuity is essentially, like, how people will argue like outlines are like the skeletons to a paper. Continuity is literally the skeleton to a story. Like not even a story, like it's like all aspects of the story, like it's the characters and the world building
I wouldn't
and
even
the
call it
narrative
that.
and then plots and such.
I want. I want to
So
go
there's
even
like
further.
this shit if you
Continuity
like
is literally. It's literally the force that keeps the body together.
like it's basically just things to keep in to make sure that you are chronicling and keeping track of your shit when you're writing it. If you don't actually care about continuity, you actually are pissing off your fans because your fans are the hardcore fans are the ones that are keeping track of the narrative and the continuity and being your chroniclers. If you don't give a shit what happens in this for the continuity of the story, most likely they won't. This goes double for really big serialized stories. Even episodic stories can do this really well. Which I say that, which is odd because like if episodic stories are meant to do stuff like teach lessons, then like for the most part there's like this typical thought where it's like, oh, if it's teaching a lesson, then like of course the characters don't have to develop in any real way, shape, or form because of the fact that they're mostly just there to teach the lesson. But then like to be fair, when you end up throwing in like major arcing stories into this episodic thing, then your characters are going to change and develop, and then you have to keep track to make sure that you're keeping in touch with the continuity of your characters' personalities now. You not keeping track of that is actually a very fucking bad thing. I say this as someone who writes stories.
DM Screech.
I apologize if my mic clipped. I did not mean to.
You are perfectly fine. Also, apparently Lily Orchard just hates world building in general, so
To be fair, considering the fact that for the most part, the only shows that she ever likes and she ever gives a shit about are like are like very clearly episodic things that don't take themselves that seriously, or even if they do, they must be the cleanliest fucking things in the world. That does not surprise me if she absolutely hates world building, despite the fact that even in episodic stuff, when you're creating a setting for this series to take place, you have to invest in world building. So yeah.
Even if it's simply this character acts this way, continuity is important.
where's the freaking continuity rainbow? I want it. Oh.
I haven't read the comments in a while, but let me.
Jordy sent me something.
Lily Orchard thinks Snow White should have gone Rambo on the Evil Queen rather than running away and hiding with the dwarves.
Wow.
Not
Also,
entirely
Jordy
that
actually
surprising.
sent me something to say as well. Let me see. The CN didn't want to fire the first female creator is Cap, and probably was made up by the same guy was a creep in the animation industry and had the hots for Pearl. What really happened is CN was going to give Steven Universe the boot around season 5, but Rebecca begged to finish the series properly with a movie, and CN said they would do the movie if it was tied to something. That's why we got Steven Universe Future. Side note, Thundercats Roar was cancelled within the same year it aired. This is according to Jordy.
Okay,
All
Thundercats Roar being canceled first year that it aired, not entirely that surprising.
I wouldn't be surprised if it got canceled as soon as people found out about it.
Yeah, people raged at it hard. Because
Literally,
I remember I was still watching TV regularly at this, and I was seeing everybody explode about Thundercats Roar, and I was just like, no.
From what I've seen, the only people that were actually defending Thundercats Roar were shills and people who actually worked in the industry and were generally the toxic people of the industry. And some of them just flat out said, "Hey, if you speak badly about this show, we're gonna get you blacklisted."
Yeah.
Also, because there are like rumors where like really.
And that was the moment when I realized I didn't want to work in the animation
blacklists.
industry anymore.
Yeah, because that is a thing now, isn't it? The toxic animation studios technically do have their own blacklist.
Yep.
Ugh.
I'm.
Us
mm,
going indie was a good call then.
Yeah, I
All
still
right.
want to learn animation. I'm gonna get there eventually. Just let me get away from colleague.
Number 90. This is too political. Is a complaint only made by conservatives when a story acknowledges that non-white and non-straight people exist. The existence of other kinds of people is not political. Ignore these complaints.
Okay, to be fair, like I can probably see why some people would argue this, but when I see something mentioned that this is too political, that's when you get like really close to actually like being really topical in regards to politics that's happening right now, and we would like to point out that politics right now is really fucking volatile.
Yeah, like
That is like a powder keg that most people probably don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole unless you're really good at it.
I said this before and I'll say it again. Nobody is actually against diversity. What people are against is you using diversity as a shield to shield yourself from criticism.
yeah. People also don't like messages shoved down their throat constantly. There's a reason that people get exhausted when people keep saying that you're supposed to care about something over and over again for so long that people just get tired of hearing, oh, I gotta care about this.
Wasn't there like one guy who said that if you didn't like The Last Jedi, that he would basically just unfriend you or whatever? Like, people think that not liking The Last Jedi is like code for like being a Nazi or something.
I can I cannot for the life of me be able to actually see how that is possible.
I. Mm, I'm not tired enough for this.
Okay,
But
okay, to
yeah,
be fair,
let me
people
make
like
one
Lily
thing
Orser
clear.
do tend to think that everything in life is political. That is kind of their shtick.
All right, I
Because
just
they're like mouthpieces to the progressive elites.
all right, everyone. I took a shit in my toilet. What's the politics behind that one? Exactly.
You don't promote cleanliness, therefore you are content with not caring if people get sick or not. Therefore, you're an anti-vaxxer.
However, if we didn't have the sewage system, we would be going back to the days of terribleness when all the sewage was in the streets, and we don't want that.
Oh yeah, the time where Black Death was a big thing.
Exactly.
You know, that thing that just tore through the entirety of Europe for a good couple of years.
All right, so my final thoughts on this point. Having a black guy in something isn't political, but when you go out of your way to point out the black guy and say, if you don't like the work because there's a black guy in it, you're a Nazi, that's when it gets political, and that's when people start to hate you.
I mean, it's also that, or you also like have your characters who like exist solely to like stand on soapboxes to comment on political stuff. It's sort of like that one joke in American Dad where Stan wants to like make this big statement, and then he's like, someone needs to like scoot a soapbox in front of him. He steps on it, and he's like, "Yes, shame on you." Kind of just looks at the camera.
Heckin' shame.
Yeah, but for the most part, that's done as a joke because, like, for like soapboxing.
The freaking running gags in shows where some character gives a big speech and they're standing on a literal soapbox, just chef's kiss.
My personal really clever one is the one they do in Roger Rabbit, where he's kind of trying to goad Valiant into helping him with this case, and he's like very like it's because of like the camera direction is done so well. It's that the subtlety is that he's actually standing on a soapbox.
Yeah, that was the exact example I was thinking of. We think alike.
It's super funny because the book was very much had discrimination subtext.
Oh, hmm. A controversial topic, making for good art because it makes you feel things?
Twas called
Okay.
the book. Twas called "Who Censored Roger Rabbit" in the for a reason.
Just
Yes, Kitchu, you are small. That is why you stand on a soapbox.
I am also small, and so is David.
So, any other points or any other thoughts of interest before we move on?
No, I think we're good. Number 91. The Little Mermaid and Cinderella are more feminist than Beauty and the Beast.
I
Okay,
what?
okay, Jordan Peterson.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Little Mermaid and Cinderella are more feminist than Beauty and the Beast.
Okay, I can never actually get this. Is there a reason why we have to like section off like which Disney movies are feminist and which ones aren't? Is there actually a reason why we need to do that when technically speaking all three movies she points out do showcase like really good examples of feminism?
I like. bleh. Also, I don't even know. Like, I'm pretty sure she's probably talking about the Disney ones, but because she just says The Little Mermaid, Cinderella, and Beauty and the Beast, I can only think of the original stories when she doesn't specify.
If this is Lily we're talking about and she has videos going over like reviews, like short little reviews of the movies,
She's
yeah, she's
talking
probably
about the
talking about the
Disney
Disney
ones because I
films.
do not think that Lily Orchard at this point cares enough about the creative medium to actually think of other versions.
Yes, Disney is the king. The original fairy tales do not matter. Don't worry, they were too dark anyway.
Yes, clearly. All of the old Disney movies clearly showcase strong examples of feminism. Let's not look at any examples from anime. No, sir.
Beauty and the Beast are more feminist, so Little Mermaid and Cinderella are more feminist though. Don't look at Beauty and the Beast.
Again,
That's Stockholm syndrome.
I don't understand why we feel the need to section them when all three examples do show like are feminist
Just it's
or at least have feminist leanings. Because all three of them sort of essentially promote like the concepts of female independence, which is a thing because like Ariel wants to get away from Atlantis, Cinderella just wants to be away from her stepmother, and then Belle just wants to have more than just being a pretty face because she also reads a book and such, and not just be the typical hunter's wife and whatnot. So like there's that. There's like
And
there's
Gaston
there,
wants
there's
some
resourcefulness.
Taco Bell.
he wants the Taco Bell. Reading is for sinners.
How can you read this? There's no tits.
Oh god.
You know what? Yeah, if she really just wants all female characters to be butt kicking lesbians with no flaws, that's kind of the thing. That's really weird. That's the thing that doesn't make any sense to me because like I can never understand why that's somehow the one like predominant archetype they want like characters to be beacons of feminism to be. That doesn't make sense to me.
Uh,
Is Gaston illiterate?
I think it's heavily implied in the movie. Because the actual line he says is, "How can you read this? There's no pictures."
Just Brit.
Like, yeah, this point just seems really weird because this is just kind of like this is just slanting stuff and like being mad about how one example of feminism isn't really as strong or as like expressive as the other ones when they're all equally expressive. It's just that they express them in like different ways, so it seems weird.
So you're probably wondering, like, where the hell is this coming from and why these specifically, right?
To be honest, yeah.
Alright, the big complaint about against the Little Mermaid is that there is this kind of thing where the movie is where some people think that the Little Mermaid is subtly saying that men prefer women who look pretty and don't speak.
But then you're also considering the fact that Ariel is also independent, and then when she is silent, there's like this deep thing where she shows like this great interest in everything. She's so wonderfully curious, and then when things actually go expectedly awry for stuff to happen, like there is like this brief moment where she actually is okay with being taking responsibility for the mistake she did, which ultimately led to shit like Ursula taking power and shit.
Like, legit. Like, what the frick?
You know what? I kind of want to do an episode on Disney villains because those are some of the most fun characters in Disney movies.
We may have to at some point, because then again that may also lead into like a sub talk on like Pixar twist villains.
Yeah, maybe we'll even make a tier list at like what we consider to be like the best villains, or even like a fun villain list.
To be fair, the tier maker list is a thing.
Deathhead says, if I wanted a woman that is pretty and does not speak, then I would have gotten a store-bought mannequin.
Wow. But why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
Also, why are you booing him? He's right.
Yeah, don't boo him. We love that.
Okay, so yeah, I can't really think of any other like talking point on this example. It's just
I love this
again
one.
again this is just me being confused on like why they feel the need to tier stuff on grounds of like it's the length of the like prominence of feminist elements.
All right, guys. Next one is 92. We're in the home stretch. I'm gonna BRB.
Here we go. It happens.
Bruh.
My goodness.
He took it. He's holding it and hiding it at the same time, and I hate it.
He's holding it hostage.
Ah! Screech.
But yeah, I mean, like, going back to my point, like, I don't understand why, like, the example that's like people want to say is like the biggest beacon for feminism is like the one character who kicks ass so much, stoic as shit, gives everyone shit for no reason, basically just writing her like a guy.
Oh, like, that's not what lesbians are like.
It's really weird because I remembered I wrote something for my nonfiction class, and it was like a discussion thing on characters, and like one comment that I bring up about it is fucking like you just going like just giving up and then just making her the most stock standard kick-ass female character with like just the fact that she's sort of stoic and kicks ass and has no real flaws, then like you're really doing your female characters a disservice, because like you do that and like they're sort of be essentially being forced to fight for attention for development with the rest of the cast that you have because they're so bland as shit.
Yep.
So like that was my thing, and like I'm just sitting here and I'm like, okay, well there's like other elements of feminism you can use. So like I don't understand why like among all the other virtues and elements that you could pull from feminism that you could use to strengthen your characters, the thing you go for is essentially just making her the equivalent of a female space marine.
Just okay then. Bleep.
Yeah, it's just that I never understood it. I never understood it because it feels really cheap. And yes, this is from like within the same essay. I bring up how I consider character creation as something that is very much like part of world building, because you're essentially creating the characters that exist in your setting. So it would only make sense that you give as much care to creating them as you would creating your world, because like if you just make this super amazing, oh holy shit fuckballs world, and then you just have these boring people running around it, then like What was the point of the world? You only did like half a job.
Yep. Wait, you would what, David?
Just name the mannequin after the after the sculpture woman from Pygmalion.
Hey, no. Don't make me jealous of a sculpture, you hecker.
No, don't do that.
Do not.
So,
Why?
what's wrong with you, sir?
Why did you put a ring on it if you're gonna leave me for a mannequin? Frick you.
So yeah, that was my that. So yeah, if anyone wanted my really, if anyone was ever interested in my super detailed, super at least vaguely insightful look into like at least feminist characters, you're welcome, I guess. It's not entirely the most in-depth thing in the world. I'd have to write up something a little more expansive and do a little extra, but for the most part, that's just my thoughts in general. You can agree, you can disagree. Hey, as long as the thoughts out there and the discourse is discussed, then hey, certainly causes a discussion, right?
Oh yeah.
Sup, nerds? I'm back.
Hey, what's up? We missed you.
Eh.
All right. Number 92. If you want to know when to change a trans character's pronouns in the narration, doing so at the moment when they realize who they are and admit it to themselves out loud is mwah.
Yeah, no comment. This makes sense to me.
Yeah.
No comment. Reasonable.
Yeah, I don't know enough about trans people to actually talk about this one.
Yeah, yeah, I really don't either. So, but for the most part, this is kind of reasonable considering one of my projects that I'm working on. So, this makes sense on grounds of like narrative speaking because this is essentially like the peak of the narrative and the peak of their character arc. So, yeah, makes sense to me.
Mhm.
Wait, hold on. Let's see. So Deathhead, if you get a mannequin, will it be named Galadia? I don't know. Great myth. Sculpture create a waifu. Greek. You know what?
Sir,
Yeah,
that
I
is
would.
Galatea.
Yeah, what Kitchu's talking about is the myth of Pygmalion.
Okay, so
Where
let me.
he basically
The
he doesn't
sculptor
like
who
women who talk and have sex. So he made his own wife.
okay.
Look, OSP paraphrasing. What do you want?
True. Yes. Yeah, it makes sense when she says it like that. Lily's on record saying that all straight people's relationships are abusive. You know what? To be fair, given
Me?
how
Excuse you.
I was gonna say, to be fair, given how super far left her stance is, that's not entirely surprising.
Yeah. I am
That
dating a straight man, so yeah,
I.
that is wrong.
You know, I'm sorry to see where the movie Bob influence comes in.
Oh no.
It's becoming more and more obvious, isn't it?
Number 93. As long as it isn't harmful or bigoted, you don't have to justify story decisions made on the basis of self-indulgence.
Doesn't this essentially just completely retcon all of the points she made previously about removing stuff that is offensive for story reasons?
Lily, no. 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 You have to make intentional decisions.
Yeah. Like, if it's supposed to be self-indulgent, write a fan fiction. There's a reason they're called fan fiction. They're supposed to be fun.
Or they're for fans. See also why aren't these episodic TV shows like my fanfics?
I forgot about my joke. Thank you for bringing it back.
The worst part is I didn't even do your joke right.
Why isn't it like my fanfics?
Yeah,
Number
something along those lines.
94. Why isn't this TV show like my fanfic? No, it's vampires and werewolves are not inherently lettuce, bacon, tomato coated, and doing so is an example of othering. They work better as metaphors for aristocracy and predators, respectively, rather than the underclass. We did. It's actually funny she mentions this when we're promoting something like
lady.
It's funny It's funny how we're reading that tip while we're promoting something called Monster Hospital.
Because I'm recalling correctly, Wolfgang is technically a straight guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a straight guy.
He's just a straight black man, right?
He's a black Chad.
And then Raphael is just...
Raphael's just flamboyant.
And also an asshole.
And I
Yeah.
really don't like how she says that they have to be used as predators, like aristocracy and predators, respectively.
Okay,
That
this is... Okay,
bothers
this is,
me so much. I hate it
okay,
so
this,
much.
I think
Especially considering historical werewolves were not all this. Frick you, lady. This one actually makes me mad.
because the big thing that I was going to say are they're not inherently lettuce, bacon, and tomato coated, but they aren't technically as inherently metaphors for aristocracy and predators either. Have you ever seen ginger snaps?
Yeah, have you done research on history too?
Yes, I too know of ginger snaps. I'm friends with one.
Ginger snaps. They essentially just use lycanthropy as a metaphor for puberty.
Like, the image of werewolves has evolved. Like, lady. Did you literally only go back to England where they were so scared of women doing things that they thought they were witches and thought, oh, yeah, that's what werewolves are? Because that's what it's sounding like!
We didn't even... Like, the whole idea of, like, the coding thing, that never even crossed our mind when we were making Wolfgang and Raphael. We just thought, hey, you know...
Let's have a character that's a werewolf. Hey, let's have a character that's a vampire.
Yeah, and then we were like, hey, you know how everyone says that vampires are kind of gay nowadays? What if we made our vampire kind of very flamboyant and fun?
Perfection.
And then with the werewolf, we're like, what if we made him like a really fun guy?
He's the fun guy. At least he's not sus.
The fun guy who kind of gets self-conscious about his werewolf form, especially when his girlfriend's involved.
Pardon me, do not call me a witch. I am a goddess. Heathen.
Watch this. Kitchu's next thing is gonna be, I got better.
Choose your next words wisely.
I feel like that's Kitchu every other time he has to talk to somebody. Like, choose your next words wisely, young Tabaxi, or else we will punt you to the other side of the football field.
Oof. See, and to be fair, technically speaking,
I say that because I don't want to kill him, but I also want to slap him.
Okay, going back to this point, like, technically speaking, like, they don't have to inherently be metaphors for aristocracy and predators, but they technically can be representatives of an underclass. So, like, there is, like, potential for it. Like, it's sort of like the equivalent of, like, how the undead or Forsaken in World of Warcraft are mostly just... Okay, well, they never entirely specify, but they sort of hint that they are, like, supposed to be, like, divergent or coded for, like, people who are neurodivergent or who have, like, mental disorders or physical disorders or, like, issues, and they end up getting essentially shunned by people because of their issues. And so they end up essentially just finding solidarity with each other.
Just breathe.
Okay, speaking of
Honestly, I
Raph,
just I just think werewolves are cool, but I also love big fluffy things.
we'll have to make a Wolfgang plush then, because he is very fluffy.
Please, I want a plushie. I love plushies.
Anyways.
I
like that point, Kitchu.
Number 95. Some of the best stories ever made were written as an act of spite. Maybe, but Shrek... Not every story is going to be Shrek, okay?
Not every story is going to be able to get away with having a character who looks vaguely similar like someone and then just calling them a really fancy fantasy version of fuckwad.
Wait, Tiger, did you know that?
Did I do what?
That Shrek
Wait,
was...
about Farquaad? Yes, I knew that.
No, like, as in the entirety of Shrek was literally just a fuck you to Disney.
Yes.
Katzenberg's a bitter man.
Hey.
I mean, to be fair, if we want to be specific, I think... What is it? Virgil wrote something as well to spite, that one Caesar. Aeneid? I think it was the Aeneid.
Number 96. Any system of government, with the exception of fascism, can exist in a positive or negative context. Monarchies are not always inherently evil. See Hawaii pre-annexation. And democracies are not always inherently good. See USA. Right? You do realize that the democracy of the USA is the kind of reason that you're actually allowed to say this, right?
You're also remembering the fact that technically the USA is not actually a democracy; it's a constitutional republic.
Supposed to be.
Also, let's not forget that people like this would be entirely for the idea of fascism if they were the ones in charge of it.
Yeah, and there's also the fact that I say constitutional republic because we actually have representatives instead of...
I also love how she says any system of government with the exception of fascism. So that means communism can be positive.
I mean,
and socialism.
She's a lefty, so it's not entirely that surprising.
I mean, let's go.
This is incredibly, despite the fact that communism is actually on par being just as bad as fascism, but this is
no. I would even argue that it's worse.
Advice.
Well, communism has actually killed far more people. Like, say what you want about fascism, but at least it doesn't have communism's 100 million death count.
To be fair, though, isn't it necessarily communism when what communism was actually meant to be originally the overthrow of the government, so there was no government in the first place?
Well, even Karl Marx, the guy who came up with the idea, said, hey guys, this is just a theory, please don't do anything with it.
Yeah, and then they were like, no, let's make socialism, but more violent.
The thing about communism and socialism is that they work well in theory because it doesn't rely on things like scarcity and human nature. It's not... My point is, it only works when everyone is pure as snow and there's infinite resources.
Yeah, that's sadly not a thing.
There is a reason why utopia does not exist, because the U in utopia actually is a root for meaning none.
So it's just not a thing. It literally does not exist.
Utopia is just a dystopia in progress.
Yeah, because utopia is too perfect to exist.
Yeah, I just... Ugh.
Yeah, so, I mean, the point makes sense. I mean, it's very politically charged, so the big thing is just tread carefully.
Number 97, lesbian still on good terms with ex-boyfriend from before coming out is a really cute friendship trope, and vice versa.
Okay.
I mean, it's not that bad. I'm still friends with the guys that I've dated.
I was gonna say no comment. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Lesbians can have male friends, okay?
Yeah, like
This is what we're basically
girls
saying.
in general can have male friends. Look at me. My friend group is guys. I don't know. I guess guys just make more sense to me. I don't know.
It's peculiar that way how that happens.
It's
I
because
rarely ever get along with girls.
we're very straightforward.
Which is entertaining, because one of the friends I was talking to today, she apparently had like a classmate admit feelings to her, and she was like, guys are so complicated. Like, I said girls are complicated, and she's like, guys are complicated too. And I'm like, what?
No.
What guys are you hanging around?
You know what? Guys go to McDonald's and order exactly what they want. Girls go to a drive-thru, they order chicken McNuggets, and then wonder why they didn't get a hamburger.
I take offense to that.
Am I wrong, though?
Not like all girls. I order what I can eat because my stomach is dumb.
So, moving on?
Yes.
Number 98. The only real difference between an extremely close platonic relationship and a romantic relationship is what the people involved choose to call it. Best friends are not something that should ever be prefixed with the word just.
Okay, see, this is how you know that she only ever sees stuff as being romantic relationships and not platonic ones. This is weird. This is worded in a really weird way. Because, like, there are people who usually
the
are
reason
just
why they put
friends.
the reason why they put the word just in front of it is because there are people like you who are crazy shippers.
Just like, oh no, they're premarital hugging.
They're holding hands.
What is this? What is this? The equivalent of like that one joke where two reviewers.
Should we should we tell that story about how you literally got in trouble for hand holding?
My college is so stupid. I swear to gosh. And they're just now putting in actual rules and stuff to counteract the whole lawsuit that got shoved against them. And that lawsuit is the only reason anything changed.
We're still alive, you know.
Anyway.
Alright.
I'll be back. Hold the frick.
Okay.
Again, I kind of stand by thinking that platonic relationships are a thing.
They are indeed a thing.
You know what? Her thinking that
okay, I'm back.
Not, Lily thinking that doesn't entirely surprise me. Do you know what she's really starting to sound like if you've ever been browsing on Twitter for long enough?
What?
If you've ever seen stuff for lesbian incels.
Those exist?
Those exist.
Yes, they do, and it bothers me.
They're it's kind of sad.
Alright, number 99. Normalize friends saying I love you to each other. Hey, Shadow.
Yes!
Okay.
I agree.
Yes.
I love you.
Cool. Love you too, man.
Hey, Tiger.
Yes?
I love you.
I love you too.
Hey, chat.
I love you.
We love you.
You don't even.
No. You don't get it. Like, so what I did was that I actually had I loaded up the clip from SpongeBob where Patrick goes, "I love you."
Okay.
Just
it's like, hey, I need to stop this for a moment, just so I can have a really important thing I have to say. I love you guys.
We love you too.
Chat, because he didn't say it.
How can you love me? I just got here.
Hey, I said it first. How dare you?
Hello. There, see,
Level.
Lily, we got it over with. Now you can't judge us.
Number 100. If
And
you
I've
write a
been
one,
doing it before I read these writing tips, so ha.
Number
Nice.
100. If you write a 100 tweet long thread of writing advice, you are a huge turd with way too much free time on your hands. Get back to work and do something productive with your time. You first!
Wait a minute, is this her taking a jab at herself because she was the one that wrote a 100-tweet long thread of writing advice?
Well,
Was this
considering
writing
how...
advice all just a paradox? And she said whatever she could because.
Was this all just an excuse to shirk off responsibilities just so she could go on Twitter and be mad at people?
Well, at least 101 is correct.
Which is weird because with how incredibly aggressive they certainly sound like she wants them to be rules as opposed to tips.
No, you see, rules were meant to be broken. Why do you think you learn the rules of art and then break them?
Right, but you have to know why the rules are there before...
I took writing classes just so I could learn how to break it.
You gotta learn the rules before you could break them, though.
Yes, I learned every single
did
rule just so I could bend them.
I did find the life drawing class, but I don't know if they'll let me take it. So, I think they're gonna be mean to me.
Oh, no.
I'm gonna have to check the prerequisites. If they're prerequisites, I'm gonna be like,
Prerequisite.
Yes, because I could pronounce my O's.
It's like the equivalent of like like the Hololive girls like having a hard time learning English because they have a hard time pronouncing R.
Oh, you mean English?
Yeah, it's funny because their L's sound like R's when they speak in it. It's like left or right.
Oui. Ew.
Oh,
Ew.
well.
Ew.
Alright, so that's it for Lily's writing tips. So now we're gonna give you some actual writing tips that don't suck.
Whoa. We.
Of course, she thinks fact and opinion are the same thing. That's not surprising. She's a person that thinks in absolutes.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
Thank you, Ben.
Facts and feelings, they're not the same. Learn the difference.
They never are. They never were.
Use his Twitter once. Wait a minute, I hate Twitter.
So, we got writing tips.
Alright,
Yee.
since Tiger is here, I think we should let her go first.
How dare you put me on the spot? Alright. I will do it. I only have small list because I am simple person.
But that's okay, because...
These are simple. Beans are simple. We like simple things. Sorry, I bonked my mic. Okie dokie. Writing tip number 1 from me is write what you know from your experience. You see, human experience, it is good inspiration.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that.
The second writing tip I have is choose your words wisely. 'Cause, like, I mean, why would you write a story and then use words that people can't understand when you're trying to say something very simple? That was the biggest thing that always got me with some old literature. We were expected to get the immediate deep meaning out of it when it was written at a different time where we don't understand the same language as it was written in.
Wise man did once say brevity is the soul of weight.
I literally mentioned how my favorite example of, like, people looking too deep into shit was Shakespeare.
Yeah, Shakespeare, it's just written in a different form from what we're used to. That's why I like OSP breaking down the frickin' classics. Because she puts it in layman's terms so we can understand it. I will never forget that friggin', what was it? To be or not to be, is that Hamlet?
Yes, that is Hamlet.
I
To
had to
be-
do
to
that
be-
entire speech in
to be or
class,
not to be,
and
that is
she
the
marked
speech.
me points down because I was pacing in front of the class, and I wasn't looking at my audience the entire time.
Introvert problems.
Just, ah! So yeah, just, bleh. Choose your
Bleh.
words wisely. Be understandable, please.
Please be understandable.
Please. My
Please.
third tip is use a natural tone. Don't write like this lofty language. Just write how you would speak. How to connect with your audience. Talk like normal human.
'Tis true. Does make a point.
My fourth one is write what you want to see. That's actually a lesson from Dr. Seuss. When he wrote his books, he didn't write what everybody else was doing. He wrote what he wanted to see in the world. That's why a lot of his books have lasted for a while. Which I have always thought was really cool.
What's his next one?
My fifth one is write for yourself first. Like, I've run into this issue before, because I've lost so much inspiration when I had to write for, like, school, when I had to write because somebody told me I had to write something, and I'm just like, but you're taking all the fun out of it now. And I hate everything about it.
I can say this as someone.
That's what school does. It takes the fun out of shit.
I can say this as someone who has gone through writing classes. Like, being forced to write something with very specific restrictions does end up making writing feel like a really big chore.
Yep. Plus, like, if you're writing for, say, if you're writing specifically to get famous or something like that, you're not gonna enjoy it. You're just gonna be chasing a high dream or something purely just for the dream instead of enjoying it. I've at least found when I don't enjoy something, I end up turning out something that's really bad.
Such is the pain of all forced storytelling.
Yep. My sixth tip is, write the truth. Like, don't cover up something if it's going on. Like, just write the truth there. Like, what has a lot of successful art done in, different things? It wrote a lot of what was true. Or it commented on something that was truly happening in an artistic way. That's why it made such an impact. My seventh point is always give feedback. You can't do something on your own. Half the time, your first draft, it's gonna be messy. And then even after you've refined it, you should go ask somebody, hey, how does this sound to you? Because if you stay in your own echo chamber of, yeah, this is right, this is good, this is great, you're gonna be stuck in that. It's not gonna get anywhere. Seeing it from a different perspective will help you see your story in a different perspective.
There's no point in your story if no one else is gonna read it.
Hmm. My 8th tip is start with the ending. This is actually something that I've done that's actually really helped me with my stories. If you already know how you want it to end, you can build up the points to get to that ending. My next point is keep something special to you around while you write. This is also something I've personally done. I have my plushie, Chief. I usually keep him around when I'm doing almost anything because he's just comforting, honestly. Uh, Even inspirational sometimes. It just gives you that drive to keep going. Something special to you just makes you feel good
When you
about
say
doing what you're doing.
when you say that he gives you inspiration, I just imagine that you put the plushie like really close to your ear, and then you just hear, "Buff."
Oh my gosh. Hilariousness. And then my last point is just find joy in your work. If you don't like your work, then why are you doing it?
What are you doing?
Like, seriously. There's a reason a lot of people just get so miserable in their work when they hate it. It's not good. Like, that might have kind of worked in the past, but that's not a way to live. Going through the motions of living is not living. So, yeah, finding joy in your work, you might turn out something really good. Because you enjoy it. And these have been writing tips with Bean.
Yay!
I feel
What?
like I didn't do very good. You two were so
he's-
quiet.
He's one. Well, I was listening quietly.
So was I.
Okay. I was. Eh. I'm not good with not getting much commentary. It just.
Well,
Confused
to be
me.
fair, if like people are doing that, if people are like reading stuff, like usually as an audience, you kind of have to be a little quiet so that you can kind of sit and take it in, and then taking it in, it's good advice.
We were being good boys and listening.
To be fair, I was pausing because I was hoping you guys were gonna say something, and then you didn't. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll continue. Eh.
Positive, positive feedback during pauses. Got it.
Look, I'm not good at giving tips like this on a video. This is my first time doing this.
It's okay. I would even say that it's a good exercise. Because you are gonna have to do that for that project you're working on if that ends up coming to Brainfreezer.
Which one? I'm working on several. The
The
first
big
one
one.
or the current one?
The big one.
Okay. Honestly, I could probably talk about that. Like, there's a difference between talking about something I'm passionate about and something that's just general views from myself. You know, like writing tips.
Yeah.
Plus, this kind of discussion I would normally write a script for.
All right. Shadow, did you wanna? Shadow, I think you should go next.
Are you sure?
Voluntold.
Well, I don't want to. Well, I have a bunch that I don't want to repeat.
Okay, when you say it like that, I can see the reason why. Okay. So here's the thing, like I have like a handful or like a good few handfuls here. and I'm probably at best going to go over like the ones that I feel are most likely the strongest, or unless you guys want me to just go over all of them.
What can
I mean, whatever you think would work best, I guess.
I asked this because there's like 23 points here.
how about like a top 20?
Top 20, huh? Okay, I
Yeah,
can do that.
yeah, because that's what I did as well.
Okay, so picking out from my wonderful, wonderful list. My first point that I would like to give you is a little exercise thing that I written up is usually helpful. It's take some time when plotting your story out to dig deeper into your characters. Ask yourself small, stupid questions to get a feel for the character's quirks and extra oddities. And when I say small, stupid questions, I literally mean small, stupid questions. Just pile them on for no other reason other than just continuing to expand on like thoughts. It's the equivalent of like, what's their name? What's their name? What type? What are they? What do they do for a living? Do they like going on long walks in the beach or in the park? Do they like to drink? What do they like to drink? Do they like what type of cup do they drink it out of? Well, how do they hold the cup when they drink it? It's sort of that stuff. It's like that's like what kind of candy do they like? Is it like do they
Yeah,
like chocolate or
since this is one of my tips as well, I'm gonna also add in the whole 20 questions thing. Like, what's their favorite movie? What song do they hum in the shower? Do they have any hobbies? Do they think pineapple belongs on pizza? Those questions.
Do they do taxidermy? Yeah, all those really stupid questions.
Do they hoard dice and keep them in their dice bag so that they can click clack them at their next campaign?
When Sweet Caroline begins to play, are they one of those people that goes ba ba ba?
Do they just have a dice bag with them just so they can rattle it and catch people off guard at random points in time?
Funnily enough, I actually do carry one of my sets of dice with me everywhere. It's with my crystals.
Oh yes, how intriguing. Okay, the next point that I want to bring up is another sort of exercise thing. Kind of, not really, but it's something you can technically do outside of writing, and it's take time to be outside with some headphones, but don't listen to any music, and use that to listen to how other people talk around you. People hearing is a good exercise to study and practice getting down a natural voice for your characters. This was a common thing that a lot of people like to point out with a lot of my writings. A lot of my writings, they like to mention, like, the big thing they always tend to say is a big sticking point or a big praising point, is the fact that I always make characters sound natural. It's not like some really super complicated shit. It's more just like really casual. It's really oddly casual, despite like how the setting will sometimes be.
I mean, the characters gotta live in the world too.
So yeah, that was mostly just that, and it's mostly on the grounds that I usually highly value like characters having a natural voice. It's like the one big thing that I will always get on when like I'm reading something and like I'm hearing dialogue, and it's like, okay, your story's good and all, but I think there's a really weird thing here. It's like your character's dialogue sounds a little too wooden and a little on the nose. Like, it seems really peculiar because I see the description of the character, and when I look at it, it doesn't really seem like the way they would speak. So yeah, that's mostly just that. Those are just two exercises. One is like building characters, another is catching voices down correctly. And considering that I'm just there, I might as well just go on the third exercise that I technically have on this list is build up a good relationship by setting up two characters on a day trip together. Imagine what they'd wear, where they'd go, what they'd eat, how they'd talk to each other, and so forth. This is like, that's the equivalent of like setting them up on an imaginary date. It's like, where do they go? Do they go to the park, the beach, or the movies? If they go to a restaurant, do they go to a 5-star place? Do they go to just a dive-in, just a drive? Do they go to a bar? Do they eat proper? Do they not eat proper? Do they wear formal clothes when they're out? Do they wear sort of casual stuff? Do they get gifts for each other? Are they casual? Are they kind of nervous?
Do they break up because one of them says "uh-oh, spaghettios" when things go wrong?
Yeah, stupid shit like that.
I'm afraid I can't be with you anymore. Is it because I say uh-oh SpaghettiOs when things go wrong? Yes!
It's like, yes, exactly. It's like, wait, I could change.
Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs.
Okay, I'm done.
I don't know.
Alright.
I think that's possibly. I forgot where I got that from, but it wasn't made up by me. But it's a brilliant joke.
It's not entirely that surprising. Alright, so the next point that I want to bring up is something, a general tip for grabbing inspiration, and this is mostly just widen your scope of entertainment. You can find inspiration in the weirdest places sometimes. Like, for example, you can find it in weird random research for stuff like supernatural stuff, history of the occult, astronomy. I think Guilty Gear picks up a lot of inspiration from just because Daisuke was a really big rock fan. Because a lot of it's just a lot of rock references.
Funnily enough, one of my stories was quite literally inspired by a Pepsi cup on a bench at a bus stop. And yes, I'm being serious. David can vouch for me on that.
Wouldn't be entirely that surprising.
He's the one that helped make it, so.
You know, Shadow, it's not on my list, but I full-heartedly agree with that. Go outside your comfort zone, guys. This is actually one of the. This is actually something This is actually something I get on Kylo's ass about all the time. About he only plays like 3 games. Halo and GTA mostly, and sometimes Smash Bros. That's the only 3 games he plays, and every time I try to give him a game recommendation, he's like, nah, I don't know, that doesn't interest me, man. And I almost sold him on Ruiner, but he didn't like that it was isometric.
It happens.
So yeah, go outside your comfort zone. Try new things that you might not. If you don't think you like something, I would say give it a shot anyway, because you never know. Like, I actually don't like roguelikes, but I love the hell out of Hades.
And then there's me who plays
basically.
Bioshock.
Yeah, basically. My next point, and this is getting into like sort of stuff within the story itself, because I have already mentioned it before, and it's just something I firmly believe, but it's something that must be said in regards to the fact that like there has been a point, Lily has made a point about it before, and this is my counter. World building is a cornerstone to a good story, but let it happen in the background. Let it happen naturally while the story plays out for the audience. So this is mostly just the fact of like the world building exists within the background as sort of common knowledge for the characters. But at the same time, don't have it overshadow, because if the characters are within the setting, then they're not really going to question if things are there. Like, the only way that world building exposition could be used, if you're going to use it in your story, would be the equivalent of an isekai story, where a character is like taken in from one world to another, and they have to deal with this new world. Like, what the fuck? There's these giant eagle dragons people have to fly around in, and they ride magic elevators? Wait a minute, what is going on? Yeah, it's basically that. But if like the characters are already within the setting, then of course they're already going to know that stuff. So if you just have it exist in the background, and then you just sort of like give the bare minimum of a description to like how a few things function, but not give them super prevalence to the story, which is the shit that the audience is there for, then world building itself is okay, because it's in the background and it's not in the foreground taking over the story.
Something I like to do, I did this a little with Monster Hospital. I'm actually really going to do this with another project that I'm working on right now, but something I like to do is that something natural you can do to make the world building feel a bit more natural is that you can actually have your main character learn all this information at the same time the audience does. Not necessarily by having the main character be explained to everything, but make it so that, they naturally start picking up on things.
Yeah, basically speaking, I'm mostly just, sort of like my point. That's, and by the way, if anyone wants to know my stance on world building, that's my stance, and that's my stance abridged.
Yep. I remember being very like, world building is a good thing. Dang it.
And I wholeheartedly agree with you. That is my reason for it. That is sort of like, that is my reason. That is my reason for it, and also like a tip for when you're doing it, and also like at least a reason for why I have it. Because like if the characters are like a fluid part of the setting, then they already know like the aspects of the world, so there would be no reason to waste so much extra exposition on it. So my next point, and this is a really, really fun one for anyone who likes coming up with really complicated magic systems or any sort of like ability stuff for their things, and they want to do sort of like nifty wifty action stories. Weigh in your choices of power systems if you're going to use one. Hard power systems typically provide depth to the setting, and they sort of add to the realism because they essentially act on the world building aspect of everything, because they're essentially just very detailed, and they have to deal very much with the depth of the world itself. And soft power systems are basically just really freeform, because you don't have to actually explain anything about how it works, because you can basically just be, it just works. And soft power systems are typically really good for spectacle fuel. And yes, I say spectacle fuel because that would be like the shit you would look at in visual stuff, or like in any fighting game when they do cinematic finishers, and you're like, oh my god, this is the coolest shit in the world. So yes, that is my thing on power systems.
Perfect.
I mean, if you're using hard power systems, it goes without saying that when you usually consider that when you're doing world building. If you usually do it when you consider world building. If it's like a hard system, then like when you're doing the world building, another aspect of the world you have to do is like the rules for your hard power system. Like that's a continuity thing, because especially for hard power systems as opposed to soft power systems, because the hard power systems are the ones that are very rule centric. Think like in Dungeons and Dragons, where you need reagents for your spells, or if you're clerics and you just need gold. Let us not forget you must pay for these spells.
Must be a good Christian and give your tithe.
Your God enjoys charity.
You make a terrible god!
Okay. Alright, so my next point that I want to bring up is typical thing for characters, and this is consider the size of your main cast closely, because for the most part, if you're gonna have a really big cast, then you really need to keep that into consideration. I would argue a good handful is more than enough, because that is going to be more than enough to bounce off each other. Because that's going to be the big thing. Like if you have a main cast, the main cast usually has to bounce off each other really well, and a good handful is enough to bounce off each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that point. My next point is in relation to characters is let your character's actions speak for them. The tiniest motions and emotes can say a lot about their thoughts and feelings. This is mostly just going into this is like vaguely a thing on subtext and subtlety, and this is mostly just a show don't tell thing. But like
body language.
Yeah, because if you're developing your characters, then like having a good idea of like their mannerisms or any sort of like weird things they'll do with body language is really important to like sell actions and emotions. because it definitely does help sell stuff. Like if one character is a little tenser than the other and like has a thing where they get super pissed at someone, they like grab them really hard by the collar and just like they're so fucking strong they can just lift the person up onto like the tip of their shoes. Yeah, it's just stuff like that. Body language is super important when you want to like promote subtlety and be show don't tell, because show don't tell is actually really important.
There's some mediums where it's not as easily doable, like books or like theater, but when you're talking about stuff like TV, comics, animation, movies, yeah, show don't tell wherever you can.
As someone who writes stories and is a genre writer, show don't tell actually does play a really big deal in when you're writing stories. So yeah, that is the one point that I will argue you on, but that's besides the point. My next point that I want to bring up is tis a little bit odd, a little bit left field from me, but
A little bit odd.
Shut up. A little odd considering me. And that point is, don't be ashamed of having a little feta fuel in your story, but just remember to express your kink responsibly. Because if you're gonna do it, then like if you're gonna do it, and like no one's gonna be able to stop you. The only thing you really can do is just do it respectively and not be so overbearing with it. It's just just do that. Like if you're overbearing about it, it's just really fucking rude.
Is that why the Grinch foot fetish guy had a lot of say in the Cat in the Hat game?
Yes, that is exactly why he had so much say and the reason why I was there.
Oh boy.
The next point that I would like to bring up is another character thing and something that is genuinely helpful when creating stuff. And this is something that I will technically do with a lot of my other work, because it's relatively easy to like do this because there's a lot of facets to me. Is throw bits and pieces of yourself in a character or two. You know yourself better than anyone else for a reason. And when I say bits and pieces of you, I mean literally just bits and pieces. I don't mean just throw the whole chunk of yourself onto a person.
It's actually funny
they become an author insert, and when you throw bits and pieces of yourself, you're just taking like bits and quirks of yourself to make characters a little more interesting, and like sometimes says a little bit about yourself when it happens.
You say that as a tip, but I find myself doing that a lot by accident, actually.
If you do it by accident, then it's something that like naturally happens, like time and place. Like,
yeah,
this is something I will note for like one of my professional projects, but it's like there is very specifically like a character that has like very peculiar mannerisms in the way that she speaks or in the way that she carries herself, and it's the fact that I have a little bit of myself on her. And there's at least at much of this point where there is at least one point where it's at least hinted that she is at least confirmed to be autistic. So yeah.
Yeah, it's weird, but like when I write a character, like even stuff that like even like halfway through writing it, I suddenly come to the realization it's like, oh my god, like this one trait that this character has, I have that as well. And it's like something really small too, like. But
looking at Dusty's like looking in a mirror.
I wouldn't go that far. Like
you see a little Dusty actually staring at you.
Okay, truth be told, as much as I love doing the Dusty voice, I think the only real similarity between the two of us is that we both have a little bit of mischief, but even there, I disagree with the amount of it. Honestly, Dusty is almost nothing like me at all, actually. It's just like
he'd be the reflection that looks at you and is like, "You growth." And then like you just go, "Gross? All you do is judge me." Okay.
No, Dusty's the reflection who looks in the mirror, he squints his eyes, and he's like, "Ew, gay."
Okay? All you do is judge me.
Rip.
All right, next one.
All right. So my next point that I want to bring up, it's something that's really interesting that I want to say that must be addressed because a lot of people have issues with this, but I want to bring it up anyway. Power fantasy characters can still be engaging to the audience. The reason they can is because you must remember that even the strongest beings are still bound by the rules of your setting.
Superman,
Doomslayer,
Master Chief.
Guts from Berserk,
Fuck it, even Kratos.
Soul Bad Guy from Guilty Gear. Yeah, an example that I want to bring up is like characters that are bound by the rules of their setting. Ragnar the Blood Edge from BlazBlue is like the typical super grudgy 80s and 80s anti-hero who has like, you know, he has like all the typical trappings, like big thick fucking coat, sword turns into a scythe, he has a magic hand that allows him to steal the souls from his enemies, he harnesses dark magic and is also the monster that he's trying to slay, but that's besides the point. I could point out on multiple fingers how many times he gets his ass handed to him because there are other characters in the setting that are much stronger than he is. And this is taking into account like the rules of the setting that he's in, which is super like anime. There's also the fact that his personality is brash.
Well,
Rash
is it
running the
an
decisions.
anime based on a mango?
No, it's an anime fighter. So
It's an animal based on a mango.
yeah, it's an anime fighting game. Yeah, he gets his ass handed to him half the time because there are characters that exist that are much stronger than he is. No one gives him the light of day because they always get annoyed with his fucking with his 80s anti-hero thing. And he's very rash and he likes throwing himself into situations. So that's why he gets his ass handed to him. So he is bound by the rules of his setting, but he is still a power fantasy character because he always ends up getting these very super spur of the moment power-ups that let him fight the big bads. So yeah, that's my point. Power fantasy characters can be engaging. Goblin Slayer is engaging because he is weak against most creatures because he has been so laser focused on killing goblins.
Goblin Slayer, no, don't go after Honey.
So yeah, that was it. My next point that I want to bring up is something that is sort of important when you're actually planning your story because this is something that is going to happen. Don't try and deny it. Even when you have everything planned out, there is still the fact that the element of surprise can still always get you. Keep an open mind when you're writing. Prepare for characters and plot lines to veer in wildly different directions than you originally planned. Like the weird thing is like it's just going to happen. Like it's gonna be really weird to actually like prepare for like you have like everything prepared and then all of a sudden something veers into a different direction that you didn't think. I was like, wait, what the fuck? I didn't remember doing this. And then like you kind of sit and stew on it for a moment and then like the longer you think about it, the more you're thinking like, wait, you know what? This actually makes a lot of sense. Let's roll with this. And then you roll with it and then chances are it's actually a lot better than what you originally had planned. Or you come up with some weird compromise and you synthesize your original plan with the new direction and you're like, wow, this is actually really cool.
Yes.
Nice.
Combine ideas. It's fun.
Yeah, it's actually, in fact, that's actually one of Pixar's rules of storytelling.
Yep.
They even go on to say that you might feel like you're losing something, but you're actually getting more.
Yeah, basically speaking, if there's like an equivalent to like this rule in a nutshell from me, it is sometimes Jesus is gonna take the wheel, and then there are occasions where you just let him.
And then there's some times where Critical takes the wheel instead.
And then sometimes you just let him.
I mean, this is the guy who was in the Hunger Games. Of course you do.
You know, of course. So, yeah, basically.
You know, one of my favorite comments on a critical video is he's opening the box for the Poopsie Slime Surprise Unicorn, and the comment is Christ opening his first birthday present 180.
Oh my god.
So,
Oof.
what's next one?
The next thing that I have, to point out is a very general writing thing. That this is something that is going to happen, whether you like take precautions for it or not. Look into having someone serve as a sensitivity writer for serious topics if you feel like you really need to. And even with all of that work and all of that cleaning up, still expect to offend someone. Like, in this day and age, it's literally just fucking impossible to actually just tend to everyone's needs. And sometimes you just can't do it. Even when you have a sensitivity writer for super serious stuff so you can better write something. And then if you still end up offending someone, you're going to offend someone, and you might as well just keep writing.
Yep. Anybody can get offended by anything.
Twitter. That's all I have to say.
I mean, you ain't wrong. Like, literally one of my favorite YouTubers had to get after a bunch of artists for being like, this art offends me personally, therefore it should not exist.
Ah, yes, says you and literally every other person in the world. Anyways. The next thing that I want to say is a general thing to help with getting out of your comfort zone in regards to what you write, because for the most part, in my writing classes, they never actually gave me the freedom to write with wildly different stuff. I was mostly writing super down-to-earth stories, and they were mostly boring as fuck. So, my advice to you is try your hand at a bunch of wildly different genres. An example of this from another video that I have seen would be a heist movie following a cult. Could be a joy to work on.
It's amazing.
Try your hand at wildly different genres.
How much money do I have to throw at you to actually write that?
You will have to throw me a lot more than what you probably will be paying me.
Oof.
But to be fair, I'm reasonable, so reasonable price.
Okay.
We will discuss later.
All right. Next.
Figure it out. It's fine.
All right. Next thing that I want to point out, and this is something that is mostly important in regards to, like, because a lot of people like to say if something's for kids, then there's no reason to be have such a big deal about it. Practice weaving subtext into your work. Never talk down to your audience, even when they're kids, especially when they're kids.
Kids are smarter than you think they are.
Why do you think everyone really liked Avatar?
It was smart.
Avatar was super smart. Super smart. Weaved a bunch of subtext about a bunch of things that was really complicated for kids presumably to understand, but they understood well enough because they weaved it so well into the story with the characters and such.
Why do you think people love the first 3 seasons of SpongeBob?
It was like shit about war and pacifism, and sometimes pacifism gets in the way of doing the right thing, and the stigma of war on people that have been hurt by you, and holding on to grudges. Weaving that shit as subtext into your stories makes them infinitely much better if you know what you're doing, because it means that you are at least aware that your audience can take it, and for the most part, they probably can. My next point that I want to bring up is a little something extra for writing, and this is something that, despite the fact of, like, changing for stuff is kind of like sticking to typical plot lines and stuff gets a little stale, and then like they'll say like, oh, like when Lily said, oh, just choose if you're going to be a drama or a comedy at the start and stick with it. I sit here and I'm like, no, instead consider mixing tones instead of changing tones. A little humor, horror, and spectacle won't kill you.
But don't have them all at once though. Otherwise, you get the MCU.
Just a little bit.
Hey, I know this guy has a gun at us, but let me make a joke.
I was going to say they had a gun at you, and then and then there's a moment you kind of look at him, look at the gun, look back at him, and then you make a quick remark like, "Is that thing on safety?"
Seinfeld theme plays.
The man kind of looks at it, kind of like brings it up to kind of examine it closer, and then you go over and then you kick the gun out of his hand. Or kick the gun out of his hand and then you put it into your hand and then you do a quick click and then you're like, now it's not.
10 out of 10. IGN.
And my next one.
Okay, so the next one is...
Ears?
Yes. I speak weird, okay? This is something that I would like to point out, mostly because this is something that a lot of people get really nervous about because they feel like they have to follow the herd and be just as gritty and adult as everything else is, and it is, don't be afraid of making fluffy stories. People enjoy light, cute stuff just as much as adult stuff. Usually works as a good detox. There's a reason why stuff like My Little Pony is really popular.
I like cuteness.
Yeah, people like cute stuff. Even when they admit they don't want to, even when they admit that they don't, they like cute stuff.
Cuteness is good.
There is a reason why Pokemon is so popular. And it's not because tiny things can turn into big scary things. It's because sometimes tiny things turned into tiny cuter things.
There's a reason we have Bean.
Yeah, fluffy stories. And the last 2 points that I will leave with you, or at least 3, actually, because these 3 are sort of mostly just motivational stuff. So the first motivational one that I want to give you is don't give up so easily. Trying will always be more rewarding than letting go and doing nothing. If you're pushing all this effort into writing a story, then it clearly shows that you really, really care about it. And if anything, if you just get really frustrated about something and then you just give up and then you don't finish it, that story is just going to sit in your drawer or in your flash drive collecting dust or cyber dust, whatever the fuck it collects in a computer, and it doesn't see the light of day. And that is a great disservice to stories as an art form. It really helps to have a little bit of pride in yourself and perseverance to push through, to keep working on something. The next, second piece of motivational advice is strive to be the first you. Don't feel trapped in some other work's shadow. A lot of people tend to get very discouraged when something comes up and the thought comes into the back of their head where they're just like, fuck, I have to compete with that now. But you really, really don't. There's no reason to feel like you have to compete with something, because if you force yourself to compete with something, then your work is going to suffer for it because you're trying so hard to be just like that. An example for this is there has been talks about it, but there is a project at some point down the line in Brainfreezerrr that I am the lead writer in, and there was probably some impression first off that it was going to be weird because it's coming from the same guys that worked on Monster Hospital. But the thing is like, I'm not competing with Monster Hospital because what I'm doing is so fucking different from what Slacker's doing.
It is.
Namely, that mine is going to namely that mine is more interesting. Sorry about that. Anyways,
Who do you
I
think
mean,
is
a lot of what I
Who do you
write
think
is
is
also
trying to
pretty
get it to come out? I think it's awesome too.
so yeah, basically that's the reason. Like, I have a thing that I'm being a lead writer for, and like I don't feel the need to compete with Slacker because it would make no sense.
I don't feel the
same
need
for
to
me
compete.
with my project.
We're both aiming for wildly different things.
Personally, I don't feel like we have to compete. If anything, I feel like we should all
I-
work together in order to make these
honestly
projects come true.
don't think we need. I honestly don't think we need to compete either. I mean, like, it would have been pointless.
I think
Like,
we're
both
all
series
stronger. I believe we're all
both-
stronger together, if that makes sense.
It was gonna say like my thing is just so wildly different. There would be no reason to compete because they're in like two different ballparks. And
I
finally,
don't know how different my project is from you guys's.
I would argue your project is unique.
It's very unique.
There's certainly no reason to feel like you need to compete with it. So
I think it's
Yeah,
fine just
yeah,
the way
yeah.
it is.
yeah, just my thoughts. Okay, and so for my last piece of advice that I want to give to you all, motivational advice: talent does not define skill. Skill is polished and sharpened with time and patience. I talk big game about taking writing classes, but for the most part, I sort of had this weird knack for writing when I was growing up. Like, I would write in it's roughly from like either first grade to third grade was when I would start writing just a bunch. And it was just me coming up with 1,000 different ideas in my head and how I could make them work. And it was all that extra stuff. There was definitely talent that was there. Everyone always saw that there was talent there. I never felt like that's really defined the skill because a lot of my older stuff is really shit. And it was only after getting to college and taking my writing classes that I learned about the rules. And it was through learning the rules that I could sharpen and polish my skill, which could help with my talent. I also learned the rules so I could break them. Go figure. But that's besides the point. Don't feel like if you're not talented at something that you can't do it. Because if you have enough time and patience to throw into dedication to learn it, then you will be just as good, if not better, than someone who has the natural talent for what you're doing. Especially if you're telling a really good story. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Insert clapping
Alright.
here.
So, I was actually kind of surprised. Like, I think my list lined up more with Tigers than it did with your Shadow. But both of you had some really great advice.
I'm glad my simplicity was good advice.
Alright, I have to BRB, but when I come back, I'm gonna go right off my list.
I was about to say, I'm alright. I take writing classes, so it would make sense that I have a lot of really weird way of doing it.
Alright,
If any,
BRB, guys.
cool. If anyone would like any thoughts, or if anyone would have any questions about my class, please feel free to let me know. Please leave messages in the chat, or if you are on Discord, feel free to kindly come looking for me and ask me questions. I will always be open to answer anything about storytelling. I like telling stories.
Stories are fun.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, to be fair, keeping an open mind when you're writing is basically the equivalent of like being a DM at a table and then like having something set up and then your players end up taking wildly different directions off the path and you're like, wait, no. And then they keep going and then something happens and you're like, wait, yes.
Just yes.
All of the yes. When you need everything charged, but you forgot your surge protector back in your dorm room.
Damn you, surge protectors.
I need to get one just for home at this rate.
Ye happens.
Gotta BRB for a moment anyway as well. Apologies. I won't be long though.
If you're writing a tabletop RPG, those are sort of okay. Well, tabletop RPGs are sort of like split between two different things. One, they're split between mechanics, which are the basic rules, the essential mechanical rules for play, and then you have the essential lore, which is like the actual world building that I would have gone on to discuss previously. So there's like a weird thing where you really can't combine them, but like you can make mechanical rules that play off from the world building itself, but that's besides the point. Yeah, I apologize if I couldn't give you any more advice in advance because tabletops writing stuff for tabletop games is wildly a little more different than writing a story because it's essentially splitting it into two halves, which is the equivalent of the mechanical rules of the world and then the world building of the world itself. This is also added to the fact that homebrew is a thing. So there's also the fact that tabletop games must be available for at least like the potential for home brewing for like unique spins from other people. So yeah. Did anyone else have any questions they would like to ask? Because I am the only one here right now.
Yes, I have a question. How did you get so good at writing?
I don't know. That's the weird thing.
I'm sorry. I had to.
Also, hi, you are late.
I'm sorry. I had to go. I was summoned.
It was fine. You had a question that was good. It's a shame that I can't answer that question because even I don't know why I got so good at it. I believe comments have been thrown that I was very good at I had a flair for theatrics when I was a kid. And then that led to me start taking up poetry, and then that led to me taking up writing short 3-page stories and whatnot. And then that expanded further and further and further. I occasionally dabble in RPG Maker stuff.
We.
Would you want to do the drinking game to Lily Orchard's writing tips? No, I would not. How dare you leave that out of this chat immediately.
Please. No.
I would rather not suffer from liver cirrhosis today.
Yeah.
I wonder how you would actually play a drinking game with Lily's writing tips, but yeah, I'm actually curious. When would you need to take a shot?
How to describe Ace? My earthly existence is not tainted or distracted by the frivolities of infatuation and copulating.
My
Okay.
body, my body is a temple uncorrupted by the curse of flesh. I make it sound terrible when I say it like that.
No, it's fine. It's the way the cleric says it.
Well, yeah, because the cleric is weird. They're like up there with They're up there with chastity with the paladins.
Affection.
I'm going to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by carnal sin. Heaven. Heavenly ascent. Fly up. Divination.
Oh man.
When is Slacker getting back with his goddamn drink?
Uh, when the Earth hits the sun, I think.
Oh god, no. Take a shot when there's something on the list that is just literally being bigoted, treating her opinion as a fact, and or contradicting something on the list. Do you realize that that would be like 100 shots?
Eh.
Do you, do you realize that? That's like a zero sum game. That's a lose lose situation.
Just no.
It just cannot be done. It's just 100 tips. Just 100 sips. Does it have to be strong? Does it have to be strong drinks or weak drinks? Because I would rather not have liver cirrhosis. No, sir.
For every bad point, sip tea.
Ah, yes. Tea, herbal, wonderful, will help with any sort of bodily issues.
Just.
Sorry about that, I'm back.
Oh my gosh, the Earth didn't hit the sun before he came back.
You're late.
How long was I gone?
Yes.
There was moments of silence and then discussions of a Lily Orchard writing tip drinking game.
Yeah.
Take a shot
Basically.
whenever she calls you a huge turd.
Okay, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen that often.
The weed version. Alright, time for my writing tips, and then we'll end the stream.
Okay.
Number 1, your main character needs to fail. This doesn't have to be a major loss like Infinity War, but if your character doesn't have some sort of setback that shakes them up, then they cannot learn from it, and therefore they can't grow as a character.
Suffering breeds strength.
I wouldn't even say suffering, but the idea is that you need something to kickstart the character's arc, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Number 2, when you tell the audience something is just as important as telling them, period.
To be fair, that's basically just Chekhov's gun.
This also works wonders for things like lore and world building, as you don't need to explain everything about how the world works at the beginning. You can space it out so that you learn about that as the story goes along, as the viewer needs that information.
Yeah, for the most part.
Number
See,
3. Sorry, what were you saying?
I was gonna say it makes sense for the world building thing because like if the stuff's in the background and the characters at least know about it, but then like someone brings up something, then you know it's probably important.
Yeah, I wasn't even talking about Chekhov's gun when I wrote number 2. I was just thinking like actual like plot information, or like plot stuff related to like stuff that isn't the actual plot.
Yeah, it makes sense when you say it like that.
Number 3. Bad representation is worse than no representation at all. If the one thing you can say about your character is their sexuality, race, or gender, then you don't have a character. You have a token.
And if you have tokens, you need to turn them into the counter at some point.
Get your tickets. Buy the Wienermobile, or whatever the hell they have.
Or buy a better character.
Buy a character that has personality, please. Black is not a personality trait. Gay is not a personality trait. Trans is not a personality trait. If that's all you have...
No, you cannot go to the counter and buy the same character. You already have one.
It's like,
I want the useless character on the shelf. We have the useless character on the shelf at home. The useless character on the shelf at home.
And then suddenly it's Goku.
To be fair, he is a terrible father.
Yeah.
Not intentionally, but yes, Goku is a bad dad. I think he's more of a neglectful father.
Vegeta was a better father than he was.
He's the manliest Saiyan. He's got a pink shirt. Alright, number 4. Writing is writing and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting again.
Yeah, basically.
TLDR. Don't stop at your first draft. There's always room for improvement.
Back to your writer's desk and scribble for me, monkey.
Alright, number 5 is something that Shadow brought up early. It's something that Tiger brought up earlier, but mine goes in a little bit more into detail. When writing dialogue, say it yourself out loud. If it doesn't seem natural, then either reword it or come up with something else.
Yeah, makes sense.
Number 6, believability over realism is the key to immersion. Dragons aren't realistic, but the audience should be able to believe they would exist in the context of the story. There's the difference.
If you can believe it, it is real.
But yeah, whenever somebody says, oh, well, that's not realistic, don't listen to them. Like, if somebody says, that took me out of it because it came out of nowhere, that's what people are talking about. Number 7, if you don't have a story written down, you don't have a story. Ideas are worthless if they're stuck in your head.
Or on your notebook. Or in your flash drive. Basically anywhere that's just not on paper.
Have it written down somewhere. And then even better, show it to people. That way, you can get tips. Or they'll rip it apart, but either way, you'll come out stronger for it. Number 8, I forgot if someone else here already mentioned this, but take media you like and break down why you like it as an audience member. Not only will you learn something about yourself, but you'll also have an idea of what your audience might enjoy too.
Yep.
Yeah, basically.
Number 9, what's fun to write and what's fun to watch and read are different. There's an overlap, sure, but it's hard to distinguish unless you've really got a feel for it.
Yeah, for the most part, this makes sense.
Number 10, the difference between plot and story can be explained with a road trip analogy. What the hell is a road trip? Road trip analogy. Plot is the roadmap, while the story is the memories made with the detours along the way. The audience is there for the journey, not the destination.
To answer your question, it's a road that seems comforting at first, and then the centerline dividers.
And then suddenly you find out.
Turns...
Then suddenly you find out it's a dude.
No, the road. No, it's the centerline dividers open up, and then it turns out that the road was just a giant mimic, and then it eats your car.
Okay.
Laugh all you want; those exist in Dark Sun. Mimic oases. Yeah, those are a thing.
You know what I watched again this week? It's that video of that Russian kid on, like, that TV show playing chess, and then they bring out, like, the Grand Master, and they have, like, the Dark Souls theme playing as he's walking to the kid, and they even have a health bar for him and everything.
You know.
As someone who hasn't gotten past the first... As someone who has only beaten the first level of the first Dark Souls... I could say that Dark Souls memes are possibly one of the best things out there. Anyway, moving on.
Moving on.
Number 11. The biggest rookie mistake you can make is trying to avoid tropes. Tropes are tools us writers use, and when used correctly together, form something magical. By going out of your way to avoid certain tropes, you risk falling into even worse tropes. Instead, think about how you can put a new spin on the ones you're about to walk into.
If you don't, then you basically are just writing Echo Chamber.
Number 12 is literally what Shadow mentioned before about, like, the whole 20 questions thing. Like, getting deep into writing your characters and all that.
Oh, and I thought I was being clever when I came up with that.
Honestly, I think the fact that we both came up with it just goes to show that we both know what the hell we're talking about. So I actually think it's a good thing that we both came up with it, actually. I just didn't want to steal your thunder.
Yeah, you make a fair point.
Number 13, if you don't care, neither will your audience.
Your passion is paramount.
Number 14, there's no shame in starting over from scratch. A better story might rise from the ashes.
You know, like we did with Monster Hospital. Haha, watch our old podcast.
Number 15, by facing adversity head on, we become stronger for it. The same goes for your characters. Don't be afraid to really challenge them. One of Pixar's rules of storytelling is literally, what is your character really good at? Throw the exact opposite at them. . Thoughts?
I zoned out.
I would argue it makes sense because persevering through adversity is something that is definitely an admirable trait.
Alright, this next one might be a bit controversial. Focus less on making a good ending and more on making a satisfying ending. The longer the work, the harder it is to stick the landing.
I would argue this makes sense. Writing a satisfying ending makes far more sense than trying to force yourself to make the best ending. Sometimes the best endings in the world are not good. They're sort of bittersweet, or they're sometimes dark for the most part, but if it fits the tone, then it is satisfying. So, yeah, not really controversial.
I don't know, like, I feel like some people would say, well, aren't they the same thing? Or, like, why don't you get a good ending? Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, moving on.
Do you want to know why you don't get a good ending? It's because you made bad choices. You didn't follow the route close enough.
You stole fizzy lifting drinks! You lose!
You have
Good day, sir!
You have damaged the ceiling fans, which must now be watched, so you get nothing!
Okay, I'm gonna speak honestly, like, it was limited by its time, but that movie is actually a great adaptation.
It was much better than Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That is all we can really say.
You know, it's weird, because Tim Burton's movie is technically more accurate to the book, but the fact that the one that made more liberal changes is technically the better movie.
And also, he's putting Johnny Depp against Gene fucking Wilder.
Well, I don't even think it's that. I think that Johnny Depp was just a poor casting choice.
Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, not that Johnny Depp isn't a good actor, but I'm saying that you don't get someone like Jack Sparrow to play Willy Wonka.
Eh. To be fair, though, I did like that version of Willy Wonka's Chocolate
And that's
Factory.
and that is absolutely that's absolutely fine. There's things about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory that I actually do like. Christopher Lee saying lollipops, for example. Oh, speaking of Dark Souls memes, somebody took the clip where he says caramels and put Dark Souls music over it.
Yeah, to be fair, Willy Wonka's father in that movie is scary. I already don't like dentists, but if that man was my dentist, I would just phase out of my body.
Well, that's Christopher Lee for you. He's the guy who played Sauron in Lord of the Rings. Well, not Sauron, but Saruman in Lord of the Rings. I'm actually kind of surprised he wasn't in Harry Potter, because he definitely feels like he would fit in that universe. Number 17. Chemistry goes beyond romance. It's the overall vibe between two or more characters. It's your job to make it work.
Yes. Throw them on a date. See how they imagine I plan out everything.
Maybe not even on a date. Send them on a hike. Send them to an arcade. See what they do.
Just put character in situations.
You know what I mean.
Number 18. This is another one that I feel might be a little controversial. Don't be afraid to push ideas aside. If they're useful, they'll come back.
Yeah, for the most part, I agree with this.
All right. And 19's the last one I'm gonna say on stream, but I have more. I have more than this. Number 19. The best plot twists are the ones you don't see coming and are obvious in hindsight, but don't blindside you out of nowhere.
So they're there, and you don't expect them, but you kind of expect them, but you don't really expect them. So when they come unexpectedly.
Well, what I mean is that you're watching something, and you're given subtle hints, but you don't really see them as hints, so that when the plot twist finally happens, you're like, oh my god! You're like, oh my god! And then the second time watching, you're like, oh my god, so that's why this happened and all this shit. But at the same time, you're like, but on your first time viewing, it still makes some sort of sense.
Yes.
Like, we're not even talking foreshadowing here. We're talking about very subtle hints that only the super observant would notice.
A keen eye for detail, and it still catches them off guard.
If you guys are interested, I have a couple more if you want.
I think what you have is good. Believe it is a rare verse to hit the road.
All right then. Hopefully our knowledge has brushed off on you guys.
Hopefully. Probably.
So on behalf of the Brain Freezer, don't forget, back Monster Hospital. But other than that, I've been Slacker.
I have been Tiger Bean, coming out of freaking Coleg for this.
And I've been Shadow Angel.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Farewell, ladies and gents.
Bye-bye.